Morning, everybody, and really wonderful to welcome you to our event here at COP29, Incorporating Ocean Acidification Across Mainstream Climate and Ocean Policy. We are grateful for our co-hosts, which include the UN Foundation, WRI, as well as our collaborator, the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy. And yes, my name is Jessie Turner. I'm the director of the International Alliance to Combat Ocean Acidification. And thank you so much for getting up early. We know it's hard on day 2 or 3 to do that at 9 in the morning. And of course, we've had slight changes in the schedule, so we have a little bit of a pared down set of government speakers today. But fear not, that is okay. We have made slight adjustments in the program, and I know that you all appreciate the ability to just roll with it and accept things outside of our control, which I'm learning better to do. So in keeping with today's themes, we are going to talk about different ways that national governments have been integrating or can integrate ocean acidification knowledge, priority, and research, as well as mitigation and adaptation strategies across mainstream policies. But before we do that, I want to quickly remind us why we are talking about ocean acidification, and specifically why we're talking about ocean acidification at something like a UNFCCC COP. So these are things that we should know, but I just want to remind people by the numbers that the ocean has absorbed 30 to 40% of atmospheric carbon emissions since the Industrial Revolution. This means 230 gigatons of CO2 that have gone into our ocean and increasing the acidity of our ocean by 30%. And projections indicate that the acidity of our global ocean surface waters could be 150% higher by the end of this century. And of course, the more we emit, the more acidification will worsen. One of the stats that I have heard and I like to relay is that the signature that we're seeing of ocean acidification on our sea surface now is actually the product of carbon emissions or the result of carbon emissions from 30 years ago cycling through our ocean. So we really are in a huge trend of accelerating ocean acidification. And of course, we all know that carbon dioxide, CO2, combines with seawater, or when carbon dioxide combines with seawater, H2O, it sets off a chemical reaction, which essentially means the bonded molecule of H2O, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, becomes unbonded and produces more of these free-floating hydrogen ions. And of course, pH, as we know, is the potential for hydrogen, which is the measure of how much hydrogen is in liquid, or in this case, seawater. And the chemical reaction lowers the pH of seawater. But making matters worse, these increased free-floating hydrogen ions actually bond with carbonate in the water, which makes a bicarbonate. And that essentially decreases the availability of calcium carbonate in the water, which many species like shellfish, finfish, and coral particularly need to grow, reproduce, and thrive. And so here's just a very quick snapshot of the steady decline of pH since the 1980s. But what I really want people to understand about ocean acidification is that pH alone actually doesn't tell the whole story about the harms that it causes. So much less discussed when we're talking about ocean acidification is aragonite, or aragonite saturation states. And so aragonite is a form of calcium carbonate that many marine animals use to build their skeletons and shells. And this graphic shows a decline in aragonite saturation state. And in the context of OA, saturation state is an assumed measure of the solubility of a specific organism or a species like corals, oysters, clams, or mussels under different availabilities of calcium carbonate. And so some organisms are going to start to show signs of distress at aragonite saturations of 3 or below. And some might even start to dissolve at aragonite saturation states under 1. And so as you can see here, we are seeing a really negative trend in the lowering of aragonite saturation state of our global ocean. And so what? Well, these numbers, these decreases both in pH and aragonite saturation actually really matter, and we're already seeing consequences. We see consequences and changes in species composition and distribution. This is real threats to biodiversity, reduced growth rates, and impacts on finfish, food webs, and of course, coral reef. And so that's all to say, before we start to talk about the policy around acidification, is just that these changes are real and they are worrisome. And I think sometimes when we just launch into talking about ocean acidification policy, we're not remembering sort of what we're trying to manage and what the causes of those changes really are. But here's the good news in the story. So that's why the OA Alliance was created in 2016, and we bring together governments and organizations from across the globe to increase ambition for climate action and to transform our responses to climate and ocean change. And the Alliance now includes over 130 members, and counting, last I checked, 18 national governments, which is a huge increase over the last 5 years that we've been in operation. And it really shows that national governments are ready to step up and take action on ocean acidification, both domestically as well as internationally, which we're going to talk about in order. So internationally, the Alliance works across all of these frameworks. So at the UNFCCC, we are really trying to make sure that ocean issues are represented in mitigation and adaptation agendas, and increasingly, of course, in finance agendas, the big thing on everyone's mind here at COP29. We do this by tracking and participating in the Ocean Climate Dialogue, but also working with parties directly to think about what their issues are in their own region, what they know about ocean acidification in their region, and how they're showing up in negotiations with that knowledge. We also work across the Sustainable Development Goal agenda. SDG 14 actually has an ocean acidification target to minimize and address ocean acidification. And right now, that really has to do with a lot of science and monitoring. And we really need governments to understand that we need to include policy and investments across that particular target of the SDGs. The UN Decade of Ocean Science has a sprawling ocean acidification program, and they are really working to identify OA information for management and decision-making purpose. This is local scale information that governments can do something with, not just tracking IPCC trends and changes. So it's a really big shift for the OA research community that we, in parallel, can be building together with the policy community hand in hand so that the science is actually informing policy and management in real time. And then, of course, we show up at the Our Ocean conferences. This is a great way to get more governments engaged, to make commitments, and to make friends as we continue to get more governments engaged in this work. And then at the national level, we work to support governments in better understanding and responding to local and national impacts of ocean and coastal acidification, and in this case, within their exclusive economic zone or other local boundaries. And we do this by helping governments understand that understand which types of OA actions they should prioritize across the following buckets. So obviously, reducing CO2 emissions, the #1 cause of acidification, outlining regional science or information needs that best support response. One thing that most people don't know we can do to take action on acidification is reduce land-based pollution like wastewater or agriculture runoff that actually makes coastal acidification much, much worse. So even by having that land-based approach, we can reduce coastal acidification. We need to explore adaptation and resilience strategies, and a lot of that is stuff that governments are already working on, but we can fine-tune. Things like deploying blue carbon ecosystems, embracing coastal conservation measures, understanding vulnerability to seafood species, or changing fisheries practices to be way more climate resilient than currently practices are. And then finally, we need to build international support to fund and mainstream OA actions across climate and ocean policy, which is mostly what we're going to talk about for the rest of the session. And so very quickly, just to in 2013, in 2023, it was really exciting that the Economist Impact Group published a report calling for more national governments to take action on ocean acidification, calling it a mounting crisis. And this report was very specific to national governments. That same year, and you'll hear about this later today, the United States released their National OA Action Plan at COP28, which is a really great way to throw down the gauntlet and give an example and practice of what policy at a national level on ocean acidification can look like. But we know we need to do way more. So we called on national governments to commit to domestic actions that will minimize and address ocean acidification by the 3rd UN Ocean Conference, which is occurring next year in Nice. And that is really what we laid the groundwork to do, to call governments into action on a more dedicated timeline. And so to support this work, we just this year launched the National OA Action Planning Leadership Circle, which supports invited ministries, departments, and policy officers in the development and implementation of unique domestic commitments on ocean acidification. And I'm really happy to say that we launched that OA Action Planning Leadership Circle in Athens at the Our Ocean Conference, and we hosted a roundtable meeting with invited ministries. Some of you are in the room who were present at that meeting. And we asked them, is this a good idea? Is this a stupid idea? What do you need? What do you think? And they said, yes, this is a good idea, but please, please help us integrate some of this ocean acidification work into our existing policies and help us identify the research and the monitoring that's already being done in our region, or to connect with the right people that can help us figure out what the highest needs or what the highest priorities should be. This was one of the first times since we've been working on acidification with governments that I really felt a groundswell of national governments say, we know we need to address this topic, we just don't know how, please help us. There was really open ears and open interest in thinking about a domestic approach to this topic. So we developed a program. We have a getting started checklist. We have a survey. We ask our members key questions about the region, about their concerns, about resources that are most important to them, and what their preferred approach to integrating acidification across core policy documents might be. We have a getting started checklist. We have various specific steps. And then we really try to outline a process to help them engage across their own government. Oftentimes, it's about connecting agency to agency or department to department or that research institution to that ministry. And so a lot of the work through the National OA Action Planning Leadership Circle is helping governments talk to each other within one domestic setting so that they can better integrate the work that's already happening. And really importantly, we developed policy guidance for integrating ocean acidification across key policy frameworks. And that's what we're going to talk about today and have some examples of them in practice. So the first are NDCs and NAPs. Obviously, that's pursuant to the Paris Climate Agreement. Governments really want to learn how they can incorporate and account for ocean acidification across these documents. So we have a guidance ready to go. And the government of Chile, who cannot be with us this morning, is the first of our National OA Action Planning leadership members who is integrating ocean acidification across their NAP and identifying various sectors where acidification will live in their NAP. Of course, many governments, as you all know, are part of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. And in that process, they are putting together sustainable ocean plans. And so we develop guidance for governments that want to incorporate ocean acidification, account for it across their sustainable ocean planning. And we'll hear a little bit more about that today. And then finally, for our EU member governments, or member states, we developed policy guidance to incorporate OA across something called the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, which you'll also hear about. And that's been a really meaningful part of this program as well. So that's my little intro to set us up, and really appreciate you guys being here. Without further ado, I'm going to give it over to my colleague, Dr. Annika Frosch, who is the International Policy Lead here at the Alliance and also a research fellow at University College London. Annika is going to talk us through a little bit about the process we went through to work with the European Commission, work with member states, work with different science bodies to develop our recommendations across the MSFD. So Annika, over to you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Jessie, for this nice introduction. As Jessie has already indicated, one of the ways of including ocean acidification into policy or international instruments has been a work that has been going on for 2 years, where we have been working with the European Union to include ocean acidification more into what is called the Marine Strategy Framework Directive that Jessie has already been mentioning. So we have been closely working with not just the European Commission, but also with DG Mare and other stakeholders such as the OSPA and HELCOM, so some of the regional fisheries organizations. Regional Seas Conventions. So what is MSFD? It's a European Union legislation, and it aims to protect the marine ecosystems and the marine environment and biodiversity. So currently, it is in the process of being revised, and this should be done by 2030. So this gives us the opportunity to put input into this revision process. So we decided that this is a good directive to really look into and hope to integrate ocean acidification more. To this end, we have really been trying to communicate not just between the policy side, such as the European Commission, but also between scientists, and really try to find the best solutions to integrating ocean acidification. So the MSFD's main goal is to achieve what they call good environmental status. And they have decided to use 11 descriptors that characterize what this good environmental status in European marine waters mean. So what we really at the OA Alliance have tried to do is to understand where within these 11 descriptors could ocean acidification be included, which is something, even though the MSFD is mentioning pH at some point, they really haven't included ocean acidification within these descriptors. So that's what we've been working on together with the Commission. And out of these 11 descriptors, we have really been focusing on descriptor 5 and 7. And so descriptor 5 specifically talks about eutrophication and minimizing eutrophication. So we have really tried to make sure that ocean acidification is included there because there's a strong relationship between eutrophication and ocean acidification, because both are enhanced by nutrient input and matter, organic matter. So when that is being released into the ocean, this leads to an increase of phytoplankton, and when that dies and sinks down as organic matter, it is being decomposed by bacteria, and that again leads to the release of CO2, so enhanced ocean acidification as well. So it seems to be one of the natural places to include coastal acidification, really rally for the reduction of the input of this organic matter and nutrients into the ocean water and coastal water in particular. The other descriptor that we have been working on is descriptor 7, and that descriptor is trying to prevent the permanent alteration of hydrographical conditions. So when the MSFD was put together, it has been decided only to include hydrographical conditions, but not ocean chemistry under this descriptor, which is something that we have been rallying for, to, alongside the hydrographical conditions, also include ocean chemistry and include parameters that will be able to measure ocean acidification. So we really want to enhance the monitoring of ocean acidification under this descriptor as well. What we've also tried to do is facilitate and enhance cooperation between different regions within the EU, but also outside the EU through, as I already mentioned, the work with HELCOM and OSPAR. And we really would like to see more reporting to these hubs to be able to coordinate research and coordinate the communication and what is being done in the regions. So we have been working with governments, as Jesse has already mentioned. One of them is present today that I have been in communication with and that we have been closely working with, in particular since our ocean conference, which is the host of our ocean conference, Greece. And I think we're going to hear more now from them about how they have been working with MSFD, and they really have been one of the leaders in their region to work on this topic. And I'm excited to hear more about their work.
Thank you so much, Annika. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to pass the baton, or I should have prepared you. But really appreciate that overview of all the great work that we've been doing with the European Commission, led by Annika and other colleagues, Inke and Dressler, on our team. But with that, I'm really honored to turn it over to Secretary General for Natural Environment and Waters at the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Greece. And of course, that's Secretary Petros Varalidis. And we are so grateful for the Hellenic Republic's leadership on this topic. So over to you, Secretary General, for a few remarks. You can come here if you'd like.
As you very illustratively showed, in the European Union, we are bound by the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. One directive, I have to tell you, that it took us many years to pass through the jungle of the EU institutions. But anyway, there it is. I think it's a model legislation for the protection of the seas. Of course, there are flaws. Any legislation can become better. So one of the issues that we believe that we should add more elements is the issue of ocean acidification, which is, well, it's not directly touched upon, only indirectly, in the sense that, okay, we measure pH, for example, but it's a little bit neglected as an issue. The other issue is the geographical area where you need to reach the good environmental status. It's very big, so sometimes it becomes meaningless. So, save the Mediterranean, okay. it's very, very general sometimes. But okay, we're working on that as well, at least at our national level. So, for me, being a chemical engineer, or for anyone that is a chemical engineer or a chemist, everyone knows that the acidity or the alkalinity of any water environment is crucial for any kind of chemical reactions that take place in it, and any kind of biological reactions that take place. Of course, life is resilient, and that's why it is here with us in this planet. But changes in alkalinity and acidity puts a lot of pressure on different forms of life in marine life, and this is something that needs to be explored much further. It is not clear, I believe, how this affects different sea creatures. It might be that in some seas, some oceans, the effects are different than others, because it's an issue that should not be looked at in isolation, because there's also the issue of temperature. There are other parameters that interact, so we need to see how all of them together affect seashells, corals, or other, the size of fish, different parameters. So to do that, we need to know the basic parameters, so pH. Well, you mentioned all partial pressure of CO2, total alkalinity, pH, dissolved inorganic carbon. These are the main parameters that we need to look at. We need to know their distribution at the horizontal level. I mean, in the map, to see if at coastal areas you have higher or lower values, and we also need to see in the column of the water, in the different depths, how these parameters are distributed, in order to have meaningful scientific knowledge, and then be able to deduct meaningful political decisions. Of course, that takes time. The EU is a large system. It takes time to go to one direction or to the other, but still at the national level, we are totally free to, add extra elements in what we do. That's what we're trying to do. Most of these things don't cost much, so it's not about money. It's mostly about just decide to do it and convince our marine scientists to do it. I think if you promise them papers, then they do it. If they see the possibility of publications, it's something that is attractive to them, because we need to also build scientific knowledge. We need to mature scientists to work on that and see all the interactions with the different parameters of the marine environment. And of course, we support any update of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive to the direction of being more complete and more robust in the way we analyze and we understand the marine environment. We have quite a few marine research centers in Greece. We managed to integrate them under one umbrella, most of them, not the universities, but the rest of the institutes, because always, cooperation between different institutions is always challenging. Some countries more and some countries less, but the challenge is there. We have the Hellenic Marine Research Institute in Greece that serves as this umbrella. We're very proud of the work they do. There are a little bit more scientists that we would like them to be. We try to streamline them more to the implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. We're doing progress on that. Anyway, we need to find the right balance between applied science and pure science. Also there are many universities that are dealing with the ocean chemistry and the ocean issues. So we think that in Greece we have a quite rich scientific community to deal with these matters, and we dedicate quite a few also economic resources on the implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive in order to ensure that all Greek seas that have many differences, Eastern Mediterranean region is not good enough. It's very vague. So we go at the local level, even at the level of gulfs, bays, in order to look at these parameters in a meaningful manner, in order to be able to get reasonable political decisions with tangible results for the average citizen. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Secretary General. I'm going to say you are the only Secretary General I've ever heard enumerate all the parameters of measuring ocean acidification and talking about getting information at different depths. What an expert on this topic that we have found in the Greek government, and we're so grateful for it. Honestly, it's such a pleasure to be working with your crew, and we totally see you guys as leaders as across EU member states thinking about how to do this. So all of the points that you made, the calls to action, the challenges, the opportunities are just so taken to heart. We will put them in writing and make sure that other people that weren't at this event can continue to hear them, because it was a wonderful call to action. So thank you so much. Cool. Have you ever heard that? That was really awesome. As an ocean acidification nerd, I'm thrilled. Cool. So with that knowledge, I will go ahead and turn it over to a second part of our program to talk a little bit more about this framework called Sustainable Ocean Plans, right? And this is part of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. And I'm thrilled to turn it over to our dear colleague, Mikaelin Khan, who is for the Ocean Program at World Resource Institute, to tell us a little bit about Sustainable Ocean Plans, what they are, and what the opportunities she sees for partnering with a group like the Alliance to integrate some of these recommendations that we've made across the different transformations across the SOPs. So Mikaelin, over to you.
Well, firstly, thanks so much, Jesse. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. The Ocean Panel, which is short for the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy, is a unique global initiative of serving world leaders that's working towards building momentum towards a sustainable ocean economy. So in 2020, the Ocean Panel laid out a new ocean action agenda called the Transformations, charting a course towards achieving effective protection, sustainable production, and equitable prosperity of the ocean. Now a group of 19 countries representing 50% of global coastlines, 45% of the world's exclusive economic zones, the Ocean Panel is the only group made up of serving world leaders with the authority needed to trigger, amplify, and accelerate action worldwide for ocean priorities. Their headline commitment is to achieve 100% sustainable ocean management of ocean areas within national jurisdiction, guided by sustainable ocean plans here, within 5 years of joining. Now, this agenda is built upon knowledge, science, action, and collaboration. And sustainable ocean plans, as Jesse mentioned, are holistic policy frameworks that aim to guide public and private sector decision makers on how to sustainably manage national waters to advance long-term economic and social development by protecting the natural marine ecosystems that underpin that development. And they incorporate the protection of 30 by 30 and beyond and provide a credible basis for safeguarding the long-term health and resilience of the ocean, attracting investments, and creating jobs to the benefit of coastal communities and national economies. That's why the Ocean Panel celebrates the Ocean Acidification Alliance's recent guidance on integrating ocean acidification across sustainable ocean plans and the various other frameworks that were presented today as foundational documents outlining key steps for action. Now, since its inception, the Ocean Panel has made tangible advances across their agenda. At least 9 member countries are now implementing or updating their sustainable ocean plans, with others making significant strides. With over 3/4 of Ocean Panel countries' sustainable ocean plans supported by legislative measures or policies to strengthen their institutional backing, we're making headway towards meeting our deadline. Now, we know that the ocean, the world's largest ecosystem, is facing a triple planetary crisis, from climate change, pollution, and overfishing. Ecosystems are breaking down, fish stocks are declining, and plastics are found in every corner of the ocean. These challenges cannot be addressed if some areas of the ocean are managed sustainably, while others are left open to exploitation. For this reason, together with the government of France and in partnership with the Ocean Panel and coordinated by the World Resources Institute, we launched the 100% Alliance, which calls on all coastal and ocean states to commit to sustainably managing 100% of ocean areas under national jurisdiction. And we'll continue to encourage other nations, businesses, organizations, and individuals to join us in this crucial endeavor to work towards transformational shifts for people, nature, and climate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mikaeleen, and we are so happy to be partnering with WRI and the panel a little bit more on products like this, right? So providing real concrete guidance for governments that can integrate acidification across that core policy document. I'm really excited to continue to work with you as WRI develops the climate sort of toolkit and thinking about preparing national governments in this work and how we can input content like this into that larger suite of resources. So thank you so much. It's been a huge honor to have a little bit more exposure to the way that you guys think about how to serve your panel members. So with that, and I think we will have time for questions, which I'm happy for, but I'm delighted to turn it over to Megan Cuddy with the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs with the Department of State in the United States. And so Ms. Cuddy has been a leader on ocean acidification within State Department and is going to tell us a little bit more about the U.S.'s work to create the National OA Action Plan, as you saw on the earlier slide that was released last year at COP, building on a lot of the work from U.S. states in the room and here at COP as well. And then talk a little bit maybe about the United States' role on the panel and sort of calls to action that you might have for governments who are getting started and thinking about their pathway. So over to you, Megan.
Thank you, Jesse. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I'm kind of short, so I always got to make sure it works. All right. Thank you, Jesse, so much for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be here with our colleagues from WRI and our wonderful partners from Greece. We've been phenomenal partners in ocean issues and part of our ocean family, and really happy to see them working on OA. We've made amazing progress on ocean acidification in the United States in recent years, including through joining the OA Alliance in 2022 and through, as Jesse said, releasing our National OA Action Plan at COP last year. We're keen to support the Alliance and the efforts of other governments to really integrate the consideration of ocean acidification into their overall climate response and into their overall environmental policy. We opted in the United States to develop our own standalone OA action plan as a deliverable under our National Ocean Climate Action Plan, but we strongly support the flexibility that the OA Alliance is offering to develop an OA response that really fits a government's individual needs and circumstances, including integrating OA into sustainable ocean plans or other national policies that make sense for them. As the saying goes, a rising tide really lifts all boats. The actions that we prioritize under our OA action plan, things like reducing carbon emissions that really cause OA in the first place, increasing ocean monitoring and research, and supporting blue carbon ecosystems. Those are things that not only support ocean acidification, but also address our wider ocean climate priorities on mitigation and adaptation. And so I'll talk a little bit briefly about our national plan and how it can maybe help other governments in the development of their own OA policies. So our plan looks back at our progress, describing some of our existing policy frameworks to really integrate OA into the United States national legislation and national policies. And it also looks forward to identify priorities for future action across the federal landscape and also in partnership with subnational governments and the international community, as Jesse mentioned. So our plan is organized around 4 main pillars. First and foremost, it takes a look at the urgent need to mitigate ocean acidification through reducing carbon emissions. Second, it looks at growing ocean acidification research and monitoring within the United States and our territories. Third, it looks at building community resilience to the impacts of ocean acidification. And fourth, it focuses on collaborating subnationally and internationally to better mobilize action. Ocean climate issues can really be an overwhelming challenge, and so it's very important for us to operate at a scale that's both locally actionable, but also can be scaled up to be globally impactful. And these 4 pillars really provide a roadmap to working across multiple levels of governance and across multiple sectors, from federal agencies down to local communities and from research institutions to policy institutions. In particular, in our plan, we placed a very strong emphasis on working with our subnational leaders on OA and facilitating subnational to national collaboration. I'd be remiss not to admit that several U.S. states and local governments beat us to the punch in drafting their own local OA action plan. And the state and regional leadership that we've seen in monitoring programs, programs to reduce nutrient pollution and runoff, as Jesse mentioned, as a critical OA action, and to restore, conserve, and protect blue carbon habitats have really been critical in informing our national policies and priorities, including things like funding. And that leadership will continue to be instrumentally important. We're also looking to apply those domestic best practices and the lesson learned to our collaborations with other governments as we push for global ambition on OA. For example, we've provided technical support and expert exchanges to some of our partners in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, and in Africa to really utilize and grow local community capacity for monitoring OA, including through building a regional training center in the Pacific. And being able to share that technical expertise and the lessons that we've learned with some of our critical partners has been a critical lever in growing our climate diplomacy around the world. So 2 years ago, we joined the OA Alliance as a national member, and we found it to be a really, really important space to engage with other countries and subnational governments who are all championing OA. It's not an isolated challenge. It's really a key part of our overall ocean climate system and ocean climate approach. OA is a pathway to both further encourage climate action, but also benefits from our existing mitigation and adaptation strategies. And from the state to global level, we're really encouraged by the ambitious action that's being taken by all the members of the OA Alliance to tackle this challenge, and we're looking forward to working with them in the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Megan. Super appreciate it, and love to hear that legacy of leadership in the United States on this topic, both at the federal and the state level, and really appreciate you guys championing support of the Ocean Acidification Alliance as a place where governments, both national as well as subnational governments, have been coming and are continuously invited to join us and to have these information exchanges. I'm always very surprised. Like, is the ministry in Chile interested in what the Department of Fish and Wildlife in the state of Oregon is doing on ocean acidification and hypoxia? And the answer is often yes, that we do find these cross-global and cross-jurisdiction exchanges to be really super meaningful. And I really appreciate what you said, Megan, about we're increasingly trying to help governments understand that working on acidification is both a pathway for increased ambition for a lot of our climate goals that we already have, our ocean management and health goals that we already have, but also an opportunity to better fine-tune and prioritize gaps. And a lot of that is in research around seafood economies at different scales. So that is a lot of the work in the Alliance is engaged in. So appreciate you highlighting that. And with that, I think it's quite fitting that you've queued up a little bit of legacy around the leadership of U.S. states. Our last speaker, before we maybe have time for a couple questions I might pose to our speakers, is really kind of bittersweet in a weird way for me to introduce and to have here at COP29, Secretary of California's Natural Resource Agency, Secretary Wade Crowfoot, who is a founder of the OA Alliance from the state of California back in the day that he was working in Governor Jerry Brown's office. And I don't know if you remember this, Secretary Crowfoot, but you actually came up with the name Ocean Acidification Alliance. We were sort of like, should we call it a coalition or should we call it, what should we call it? Is this a team? Is this a club? And you said, what about the Alliance? And so that is a legacy that you are bringing to this work. So over to you to give us a couple of your remarks on the last couple years of this challenge and sort of the gains that we've made.
Thank you. Well, huge thanks, Jesse. We have come such a long way in the last decade, and it's so impressive to understand what's happening in Greece and Europe and the leadership of our own country. I'll just share a little bit about the origin story of the Ocean Acidification Alliance, because I think it speaks to both the challenges we all have, but also the remarkable opportunity. So a decade ago, California, we have about 1,100 miles of coastline, and Oregon and Washington and the Canadian province of British Columbia came together around this very quiet and invisible crisis at that time, which was the acidification of our coastal waters that was impacting the shellfish industry. The shellfish industry is a regionally important industry in our coastal states, and what we were learning from our business leaders was their product was being significantly impacted by ocean acidification. At the time, people like me didn't understand that the world's oceans had absorbed most of the carbon emissions in the world, and that was wreaking havoc on our ecosystems and on our blue economy. So at the time, we decided 4 jurisdictions on the Pacific coast of North America to come together to try to understand this challenge, to share scientific knowledge, to undertake scientific assessments together, really to figure out what was the problem we were dealing with and what we needed to do. And that really galvanized the aquaculture industry and our governments to work together and to think about how we tackle this huge problem definitionally and what we need to do. And so we decided in 2016 to take collective action. And I note that 2016 was an important time because there was an emerging political leader named Donald Trump who was coming into federal office. And we were all very concerned at the time about the impact on environmental policymaking and leadership. And so we decided at the subnational level that on this issue and so many other issues, we needed to maintain leadership. So I want to say, fast forward, obviously, to this month, that American states, for what it's worth, will remain bedrock supporters and allies and partners in our fight against climate change. 24 American states are led by governors and legislatures that are very aggressive on climate change. We represent 55% of the American population and 60% of the gross domestic product in our country. This last 4 years has been incredible. Thanks to President Biden, Vice President Harris, we've been working together between states and the federal government. Obviously, that will change in the near future, but know that American leadership will continue through our states and cities. But on this issue, on ocean acidification, we knew that in 2016 we had to continue to drive. So many of your jurisdictions, we know that the single most important thing we can do to combat ocean acidification is reduce carbon pollution. Because as we continue to concentrate CO2 in the atmosphere, our oceans will continue to absorb CO2. So first and foremost, it is one more reason why we have to drive forward on stronger nationally determined contributions, stronger commitments at all levels. But we also need to do things, as has been noted, around protecting and restoring our ocean-based ecosystems. I'm so glad that there's now this playbook for ocean acidification with ocean plans. I think that's so important to build templates about what we need to be doing. So we have been working to protect our coastal and marine habitats. We have a network of marine protected areas in California, 124 networked protected areas along our coast, based on a scientific understanding of how we protect biodiversity and these habitats. That's really important, obviously, for the environment and biodiversity, but also for our blue economy. And so as these companies are being impacted by ocean acidification, we know that protecting areas is really important, not only through MPAs, but through our 30 by 30 commitment that extends to coastal waters. But we also know that we have to reduce land-based pollutions, because land-based pollution is actually exacerbating these chemical conditions. So we've made a lot of progress there. And then I would say scientific understanding. I mean, it's so great that there is this level of cohesion across our world, and that we are learning from Chile, and we are learning from Greece, and we are sharing our lessons. I mean, we have to do this more and more. And so I am so excited that this discussion that started on the Pacific coast of North America has expanded, and now we have 18 national partners in our Ocean Acidification Alliance around the world. And when we come together as the world to combat climate change, there's now a real strong platform for collaboration across the world on ocean acidification. So I'm so thankful for the leadership that you all exercise at the national level, or at the scientific institution level, or at the NGO level. We need to continue to share what's working across our jurisdictions, and frankly, to build the awareness of ocean acidification. I think if you pulled this whole building of pavilions, I would still say not enough people understand the challenges and the threats of worsening ocean acidification, but also all the action that's taking place. So I would say, I'm proud of our progress over the last 10 years, with so much more work ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary Crowfoot. It is such an honor to be opening this COP, I suppose, from our perspective with this event, and it really means a lot to have you here and to think back on all those years of work putting this together and all the different partners that have come into the mix. It is special to me, and hopefully that is special to everyone that's part of our community of practice on ocean acidification. And I would just quickly echo that it is so funny. I walk around a UNFCCC COP, and I think, of course, everyone's talking about ocean acidification. Everyone's aware of this being directly linked to carbon, and that's why we're here talking about it. And I was just in a room the other day with a bunch of my ocean colleagues about my age. We're in this leadership program together, and they all lead marine programs, in their different countries. And I said, do you know what causes ocean acidification? And they said climate change. And I said, yeah, but what specifically? And just zero awareness. And that's not a critique, it's just an observation that when we think more about this communication aspect, we still have a long way to go. So even when I open slides like this, or events like this, trying to be more thoughtful, just to all get to the same page before we start talking about the policy pieces. But this was a really lovely way to do that, so I appreciate it. I know we have 10 minutes, so I'm going to ask just 2 pointed questions to our panelists, both from Greece and from WRI. And then if we have time, if anyone else wants to make a comment, great. But otherwise, really appreciate your time today. What I want to pick up on, and this has been a challenge in the OA community of practice, we have a lot of science to do in some ways, but it's targeted science, right? We don't want to just monitor ocean acidification in the open ocean forever. It needs to be coastally relevant. It needs to be helping governments think about changes along their coastlines and species that are most vulnerable along their coastlines. And a lot of the challenge is sometimes getting governments to help prioritize what that research should be and work with the communities of practice, as you were mentioning, Secretary General, to better target the science that's happening. And some of it is funding. And I really appreciate your comment from a national government perspective, adding a couple parameters on ocean acidification monitoring, no big deal. We can add it to our MSFD. Some of the scientists are already collecting, doing water quality monitoring or ocean observing. But at different regions, I do want to think about how we can better help governments with funding needs as they arise. And so my question to you, Secretary General, is what do you think about regional entities, whether they're regional seas conventions, UN programs like UN MAP in the Mediterranean or Environment Program, and even, I've been knocking on the doors of groups like GCF and GEF and development banks to sort of say, what do you think? How do we support regional scale investment in this work, not so that it's just data collection, but that it's really getting wrapped into being applied to adaptation and resilient strategies near shore. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on regional funding bodies that you think are most available or are most applicable to this type of work in the long term.
Regional SIDS conventions are obviously a very good tool. Could be UNEP-MAP for the Mediterranean, could be OSPAR for the Atlantic Ocean. I don't think it's so much about funding, as I said.
Yeah.
It's more about raising awareness and doing it, because when you have when you're doing the sampling, you have a ship out there, and that's the main cost. It's not about some extra measurements. It just you need to put it into your research schedule with minimum cost, and you need to incorporate it into a broader plan on how you're going to use this information, from a political point of view and implementation point of view. So I think that regional SIDS conventions are a very good way of promoting this, and we would be happy to do that. Promoting this idea at the level. We would be happy to promote this idea of incorporating ocean acidification into the activities of UNEP-MAP and the things that we're looking at in the Mediterranean region.
That's great perspective, and I think we will, through the alliance. We as Annika was describing, we have this kind of EU stakeholder informal, family, I guess, a program, and it's been a lot of researchers from OSPAR, from HELCOM, some government representatives that join us, even partners in the Commission that have given us feedback along the way. And one big recommendation was to partner.
Every semester in the EU, all the marine directors meet and discuss the different issues. So that's another good forum where this issue can be brought up.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think we'll continue on that program through the Alliance next year. And I think we'll continue to reach out to you and MAP and really try to integrate a bit more. So that's really great direction. And finally, I super appreciate you saying that, I think for a lot of times, even harnessing funding for different governments, it has to be incorporated into a mainstream policy or plan for that to occur, and I think that's one of the things with the acidification work we're really trying to help governments understand is the more it can be integrated, that information can be useful to these larger policies, the more it can be wrapped into larger funding requests that are part of a whole package of policy and strategies rather than a standalone, research project. And so that's one thing that I think you've pointed to quite well. So thank you. And then final question, and I didn't clear this, so I don't want to put you on the spot, Mikaeline, but I do know that WRI has been working, or the high-level panel has been working on, I want to call them rapid assistance funds, but I don't know if that's the right term. And I just wanted you to have the opportunity to talk to this team about what that is. It's obviously not for acidification specifically, but sort of how you think those rapid assistance funds, like what are they meant to support governments in doing, and is there a climate change preparedness element relative to that?
Thanks, Jesse, for that question. So the Rapid Assistance Fund falls under Ocean Action 2030, which is the coalition that was one of the action groups under the Ocean Panel. And so what that does is it's meant to support countries who are looking to develop sustainable ocean plans and provide them with the financial or technical assistance that they require in order to get that over the line. And so what Ocean Action 2030 is looking to do is bringing on different funding mechanisms, different funding partners to support countries who are joining the coalition to be able to push out their sustainable ocean plans. And so sometimes that's, countries that are in the earlier stages that need support with for instance, conducting their public consultations, or they need support with hiring technical assistants to, scope out their plans. And so it comes in various different stages of their planning, but it's meant to support sustainable ocean plans.
Well, thank you for that. And at the Alliance, part of our membership or community of practice is we are really trying to build bridges to some of these larger funding entities to help them understand why a regional investment in this work is worthwhile, and sort of having the governments ready to understand what they would do with such an investment on acidification and how it would advance their work in this type of policy integration. So stay tuned for more, and we're always trying to support our members as best as we can. So thank you all so much for coming. Really a privilege. I thought that we would just be speaking to our panelists, so it's really, really nice to be speaking to our panelists as well as you all joining us at 9 a.m. Here at the Ocean Pavilion. I will beg for a picture with the panelists before you run away, if that's all right. And thank you so much, and wishing you guys a great day ahead and a great week ahead.